Welcome to the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare, the podcast for busy healthcare leaders who are ready to get out of survival mode so they can focus on what matters most. This is where the burnout stops and the real talk starts. I'm your host, Dr. Megan Carter, and each week I sit down with healthcare innovators who get it. We will unpack the chaos, laugh through the hard stuff, and get you at least 2 practical tips you can use at work right away. If you're ready to clear the chaos and lead with impact, you've come to the right place. Let's jump in. Welcome back to the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare, the podcast for busy healthcare leaders who are done with overwhelming workloads and burnout. This podcast is built around the big idea that you were not meant to prove your worth through exhaustion. We help you get out of survival mode by discussing your real world pain points and giving you at least 2 practical tips you can put in place right away. Today's guest is the amazing Dr. Bob Dent. Now, if you've been in nursing leadership for a few years, you already know his name. I've been following his career for a long time, and it's been such a gift to watch him grow and evolve as he supports other precious leaders in the healthcare space. Dr. Dent has been a nurse, an executive, and a coach with more than 35 years of experience transforming leaders and organizations in healthcare. From the bedside in rural hospitals to executive leadership in some of the nation's largest academic health systems, he has served as a nurse, a long-term care administrator, a chief nursing officer, chief operating officer, and academic dean. Now he's coaching and supporting healthcare leaders around the country through his company, DBD Coaching and Consulting. He's known for his brave storytelling, including his own journey of suffering and mental health challenges as a leader in this broken system in the U.S. I am so incredibly excited for this conversation. Welcome to the show, Dr. Dent.
Thank you, Dr. Carter, and you can call me Bob. I'm good with that. And I've been following you for quite some time as well. So you're doing a lot of really good work, and I've been looking forward to this conversation with you since you asked. Even in season 1, now in season 2, so I'm excited.
Thank you so much. I love that. I'm so excited. I know you have decades of memories to pull from. This is always the hard question that I ask guests, but we'll try to pick one for this next question. We readily acknowledge the reality that healthcare leaders are facing pure chaos at work every single day. What has been your most chaotic moment in healthcare leadership?
This was kind of a fun to really go back and think through 35 years. But I'm going to give you a period of time, and we'll talk about that, and we can laugh a little bit about it now. But as a bedside nurse, I'm a critical care nurse by background. Hearts were my specialty. Loved it, and I was asked to. I was as an associate degree nurse at the time, and I was asked by my leaders on night shift to be a patient care manager. So I did that and realized that, I could do more than provide really good care to my patients, that I could have an influence on multiple departments as a patient care manager, kind of a shift charge nurse on the night shift. So I went back to school. I got my undergrad degree, and then I immediately was promoted into an assistant director of nursing for a 60-bed subacute unit. So I go from, this critical care to a freestanding long-term care facility, hospital-based. And so I'm an assistant director of nursing, my first formal leadership role, and new grad BSN. And people lined up outside my doors to see me, and a lot of them in tears. We received, right after that, a survey which showed substandard care. And there was a lot of other stuff that was going on at that time. So developing relationships has always been what I want to do. So I worked, around the clock in developing relationships and set all that up. But it wasn't 8 months later that I was promoted to the director of nursing for the 180-bed facility. And so again, outside of, the education as a BSN, not a whole lot of support. And I think we see that in today's environment with our nursing leaders. So I was promoted into this director of nursing, and it was right at budget time. And I'd never done a budget, and I didn't know what resources were available. And so I did it all by pencil and paper.
Yep.
I went line item by line item, pencil and paper. Did all of my budget, went and sat down with the finance officer and others, and they said, well, Bob, we've got some of these tools and resources available. And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And I was within about $100, $200 from what it was when we put everything into the system. So it made me feel like, well, I know how to budget, because I love finance and budgeting. Well, 4 months later, I was promoted to the long-term care administrator for this
Mm,
180 bed facility. And
yeah.
not only for as a long-term care administrator, but I was also the campus magnet program director.
Wow.
And so I was serving and in order to be a long-term care administrator, you had to pass a state and national exam to be a licensed nursing home administrator. And so I went down to Arizona State University. I was in Arizona at the time. And I've checked out every book around long term care and regulations that I could find. This is not even 18 months into this new formal leadership work that I've been promoted twice, 3 times. And so I checked everything out, studied it, passed both the state and national exam, became a licensed nursing home administrator. The relationships built there, this facility became one of the best in the system,
Yeah.
recognized by the state of Arizona as one of the best facilities that they'd ever worked with. I mean, it was remarkable work that we did there, and I learned a lot in a chaotic environment. So when you talk about resiliency and other kinds of things, and learning and developing and growing, I learned a lot during that time frame. Went back to school at the same time. Got an MBA. My wife and I, we had 5 children at the time, so we were busy, both family, school, full time, church, and then all of this work at the hospital or at the long term care in the hospital. So that was a chaotic period for that 2 year time frame, and I
Wow.
learned so much there that
Yeah.
has helped me throughout the rest of my career. Really,
That's amazing. And what I hear you describing too, Bob, correct me if I'm wrong, is the reward for good work with more work. Like it
yeah,
was a
yeah,
rapid, like, hey, you're doing a great job. Let's do this. Not necessarily let's empower you with some training first, as is often the story with nursing leadership and other healthcare leadership roles, which is you're really good at what you do currently. We recognize that potential in you. We're going to give you this promotion, and you may or may not get some onboarding or some support, or it sounds like you were self directed enough to grab those resources. And doing the exercise on paper with finance, I can empathize with that so much. I did the same thing as a baby nurse manager at the age of 29. I'd like these large post-its with like the lines on them. And we had
mhm,
a daily productivity huddle where we had to explain our variance from the past 24 hours in front of the entire executive team and all the other leaders. No one taught me how to do that. I manually had to calculate. And what was funny is the fear of being embarrassed in front of that group forced me to I kind of overcompensated, and I knew exactly down to the minute if we were over our quote target, whether it was a volume issue or a clock in, clock out, incremental OT, whatever it was, I knew what it was. So then all of a sudden I got, asked to start leading finance conversations, and I'd never taken a finance class. So I think so many nurse leaders can empathize with that part of your story, which is, hey, you're doing great. We're going to push you forward. Best of luck to you.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, and I came into contact with my long-term mentor at that time, and she
Yeah.
took me under her wings. That's Rhonda Anderson. I've talked about her before. She
Yeah.
was the chief operating officer at the facility, and so she took me under her wings, and we still have conversations. Even last week, I had a conversation with her, and that's been almost 30 years ago now. But so a lot of really good things that I learned along the way, and I think it's those relationships. I tell people, even a frontline, a new nurse
Yeah.
or a nurse on a unit, I felt like, and I still am, I'm a sponge for learning. And so when I came out of my vocational nursing program back in the 90s and joined a critical care unit, I signed up for every class there was. And same
Yeah.
thing happened, I think, in leadership. You
Yeah.
learn part of it, you learn. And that's part of, the work that I do now and around culture of ownership. And you've got to be self-empowered in
Yeah.
some of this work and
Yeah.
do that. There's a lot of really good lessons learned out of that one.
I know. Yeah, absolutely. And I hear you talk about mentoring and coaching. It's so interesting. That's clearly been a continuous theme throughout your professional journey. And so I think that's interesting. It's also another way to face the chaos as a leader is surround yourself with people who are going to help elevate and mentor you. And we know that the struggle is so real as a healthcare leader, and the chaos isn't going anywhere. And I know you share my passion for helping healthcare leaders
Mhm.
thrive in that stressful environment. You recently left what we'll call traditional hospital leadership to support them even more in your own coaching and consulting business. And so, what inspired you to make that change, that pivot?
Yeah, inspired is a good question. So I'm going to be honest in the beginning, and then we'll talk about it. But so I've always felt like I've mentored and coached teams throughout my career, developing strong relationships and led organizations to Magnet, led organizations to Pathway, and many other recognitions, and created some really good teams. But part of that is it's the teams and people that you have in all of that work.
Yeah.
In today's kind of healthcare environment, there's a lot of change that's going on, a lot of restructure, a lot of those things. Well, that's what happened to me in March. My position was eliminated as
Yeah.
a chief nursing officer, and so that's part of it. But I
Yeah.
think it was as a Christian, God's nudge to say, "Hey, this is something you've had a desire to do. That is to going back to that time in the critical care unit where I stepped away from the bedside to be the patient care manager. What I could
Yeah.
do at the bedside and delivering really good care, now I had influence over an ICU. And then as I went into these leadership roles, I felt I could do some, have some significant more influence over cultures and environments in this long-term care and my CNO roles, and even as serving as or president of AONL. I traveled the country and really tried to support people. So 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, maybe I went through and did a formal training with Gazweta Business School to become as an executive coach and became a board certified executive coach. And so when God gave me this nudge, really, I think in March, I decided, do I want to go back into an operations role? I could anywhere really, or do I want to see, can I support leaders where they are,
Yeah.
aspiring nurse leaders, nurse managers, nurse directors, other chief nursing officers, with the experiences that I've had from that very first experience in the long term care to my roles within academic health systems? Can I be that support for others? And so that's what has led me into this DBD, Dr. Bob Dent Coaching, Consulting, and Speaking over the last 6 months, 7 months now, and thoroughly enjoying it.
Yeah, you're doing great. At least it looks, I mean, not from the outside looking in, it looks like you're super busy. There's great demand for your services, and it's understandable given the length of tenure, the variety of your experience. I love that you talked in the beginning about being honest. It's like we feel like we give a disclaimer. I also had a pivot that was sort of forced on me, not necessarily from a role elimination, but due to some dynamics going on that made it abundantly clear. And for me, being a person of faith, what I felt like was a nudge from above saying that you've been thinking about this for years. Done. I'm done hinting. I'm going to give you a swift kick in the rear to go the direction that I want you to go. And I don't know about you, but in the past 2 years on this journey, having moved into entrepreneurship, I'm finding more and more people that share our story that have been part of either rifts or reorgs or whatever, not because of lack of good performance, but truly just these health systems trying to cut where they can to survive financially. So we get all of these healthcare executives that are perfectly capable. They're great leaders without a job. And some of that journey, there's shame, there's guilt, there's fear, there's a lot of, so I think there's opportunity for further conversation about how we navigate that, how we future proof ourselves as much as possible from a career perspective. I believe the days of I'm going to work at this health system for 40 years and then retire, I believe that's mostly gone. I don't know that that's realistic for a lot of people anymore. And so, from a coaching and mentoring and supporting perspective, how do we prepare people for that? How do we coach them through that? So if
Yeah.
anyone that's listening is facing either a reduction in force or concerned that their role might be eliminated, what advice would you give them having gone through what you did?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, one, you're not alone in that work. You don't have to be alone. I had colleagues reach out to me, right away after that sort of transition to one, check on me, to say, hey, here's some things to consider. I think I've been there, done that kind of a deal,
Yeah.
to be able to do that. What I do in some of my coaching is help people. Um, One, prepare for their next job, if you will, and that next job or is to strengthen the work that they're in. It could
Yeah.
be strengthening that relationship, not necessarily looking to go transition to another organization, but how do I stay in organization as well? So coaching, through that part, or how to win their first 100 days in that work. There's a lot of opportunity. There's different ways to think about that. Nursing is relatively a small world,
Yeah.
and whether, being a part of a professional association or an alumni at your school, to be able to reach out to say, hey, I just need somebody to talk to through this a little bit. I think that's one. And then two, just recognize there's, plenty of people to be able to support you along that journey.
Yeah. I love that messaging. You're not alone because you're not, folks. So if you're dealing with that, please hear that. I also love that you help leaders thrive during uncertain times, kind of like we've talked about. And you've been really open about sharing your mental health journey recently. And what's struck me as radically beautiful is how you're helping to remove the stigma around mental health in healthcare leadership, especially for executives. I don't know that many clinicians realize the weight that these roles carry every single day. So, what advice would you give to a healthcare leader who might be struggling with their mental health right now?
Yeah, the pressures are real
Yeah,
and they're huge. And it took, I struggled with my, this idea for a very long time before, and I talk about that in some of my keynotes. The mask I wore, and
yeah,
we think about how we show up and lead an organization. People need leaders to lead, and I felt like over the course of my career, I did do that, and on the inside, struggling. And so there was a lot of a lot of things that question, and part of that stems way back.
yeah,
But I did reach out finally in 2022 to get that help. I wish I would have reached out much sooner. So
yeah,
one, similar to the transition conversation, is it's okay to, you're not alone, and it's okay to say. But in a mental health journey, it's okay to say, and to be able to reach out for help. That is really about self care.
yeah,
And you've got to practice self care to be self full with your teams, with the patients, the communities, and everybody else that you serve. But
yeah,
um, reach out and get the help that you need is what I would say. That it's been a huge shift for me, if you will, from 2022 on. It's not linear. There can be ups and downs in that, but I feel like where before I felt like my dark days were getting longer and
yeah,
my bright or sunny days were getting shorter.
yeah,
Now my dark days are really shorter and
yeah.
my good days are much longer. So I feel like, in this where I am in my current state, that I can say that it's been a huge shift and very positive.
Yeah. Thank you, number one, for sharing that and being vulnerable enough to share that. Again, another topic that I feel like historically we as healthcare leaders and certainly nurse leaders don't talk about openly enough. And I feel like that's shifting thanks to stories like yours and each of us sharing either whether it's burnout, a deeper mental health, whatever it is. I think the more we normalize conversations around it, the less scary it is for others and people are struggling. I mean, they just are in general in the world, not to mention healthcare, where we're the most expensive and sometimes the most unsafe compared to other countries. So I appreciate that.
No, the millennial nurses are, 30%, 30+%
Yeah.
turnover within the first couple of years. Our Gen Z nurses, up to 40% or more in the first 2 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of that has to do with, this sense of belonging
Yeah.
within their departments and things, workplace health and safety, but their mental health and well-being, this balance. And I
Yeah.
keep hearing leaders across the country, that say that we just have to, it's a different generation and they need to learn how to, well, no, we need to learn from them. you know,
Right.
we
Correct.
have a lot to learn about work,
Yes.
life balance, and how do we
Yes.
adapt to, across, we all want the same thing. It's
Yeah.
just, how do we do it?
Yes, I've said repeatedly on more than one podcast appearance, I am Gen Z's biggest fan. And the reason is they are not having it, Bob. They are not having the toxic, the incivility, the bullying. They're not having the, 60-hour work weeks. They're not having it. And I appreciate that. It's hard to be a leader who's been in the role a long time and you don't know any other way to lead or expect. But I'm telling you, they are putting pressure on the system. It needs to be disrupted for all the reasons we've said. You talked about turnover. If we want to have enough nurses in the next 20 years, we better figure out how to support this new way of leading and providing care, or the health system will crumble. So I appreciate and honor what Gen Z and younger millennials are doing. I identify as a quote elder millennial. We're the only generation that has an elder and then a non elder differentiation. So I tell people I kind of straddle the line between Gen X. My whole childhood was analog. And then in high school went digital and had all that. So I kind of get both worlds a little bit. I get the beauty of loyalty to a company and really, putting your hours in and doing your work. But having suffered through my own mental health, my own burnout story and making my pivot, I respect what Gen Z's doing. And so, absolutely, so glad you called that out. I feel like the older I get too, the more I appreciate the concept of being intentional with my time and energy. In fact, learning how to say no to activities that don't align with what's most important to me is getting easier because of that. And you recently shared an incredible approach to time management with me, and I wanted you to share that with the audience today too. Would you be willing to tell the listeners about your approach to helping your team protect their calendars at the hospital you were leading, and what was the impact of that?
Yeah, this has been something we've been working on, over the last 10, 15 years. And so it's been a practice for quite some time. And we built that into kind of a pledge, if you will. And there's multiple parts of it. And so when you think about, meetings, we agreed to in two different organizations, one an academic health system and one a very large complex, community hospital. But we had no meeting Fridays. And so there were no meeting Fridays and there were no meetings during the month of July and the last half of December. When I say no meetings, it's kind of that focused time frame, but it's, you'd only have, you could reframe that to say instead of no meetings, it would be mission critical meetings only.
Yeah.
And so mission critical, what really needs to happen in those times? And then to say that it's not a day just to party. However, it is a good day to connect if you need, and build those relationships. But it's an opportunity to catch up on everything that's happened over the course of the week. And it's
Yeah.
an opportunity to plan for the next week. And that way you go into the weekend without a whole lot of burden, if you will, and
Yeah.
be comfortable with that. And perhaps you get a luncheon with some colleagues there as well. And there's a lot of other, I can talk about more of this as much as you want on meeting.
Yeah, the more practical, the better, because that's what we're here to do specific to this podcast is, if I'm listening to this and I'm driving to work right now, let's say I'm a nurse manager, I'm driving to work and I'm like, please help me implement or suggest a no meeting zone, whether it's a Friday or time of year. What does that conversation look and sound like? How can I get support with that?
Yeah. The other kinds of things, and because what happens currently in a lot of places is when you schedule meetings, they're back to back with no. And for me, I struggled with leaving one meeting
Yeah.
and being late to another one.
Yep. Same.
So that was always, somewhat distressing. But in Outlook, you can set your time between meetings. So whenever you go to schedule a meeting, it's only booked for 45 minutes or 50 minutes. And it allows you that 10 to 15-minute time frame to get refreshed, grab something to drink, go to the bath, whatever you need to do,
Yeah.
make a call. I think even in the past, that 10 to 15 minutes was an opportunity for me to go see a patient and a family who
Yeah.
needed to see me as a chief nursing officer and still be able to make it back to my meeting. So you can automatically do that and work with your assistants to do that as well, that you get that buffer between meetings and not be able to do that. Another tip, I share this with my teams, and this is whenever you go out of town on vacation or you're taking off, you can automatically, when you set your out of office email,
Yeah.
you can delete all emails coming to you during that time frame.
Yeah.
And so I told my team, if you're going to go on vacation, delete every email that comes into you, put in that out of office reply to say, hey, I'm on vacation or I'm at whatever that may be.
Yeah.
I'm gone between now and whenever. And all emails will be deleted during this time.
Yeah.
And if you still need to get a hold of me, reach back out afterwards.
Yeah.
And because me, looking at my phone, if I've got a one on there in my inbox
Yep.
or
The bad
one
thing.
notification on my LinkedIn,
Yep.
that's triggering.
Yep.
And so I've gone on, mission trips to Fiji and Bolivia and for 2 to 3 weeks and deleted every email that came in during that time frame. You know what happens? Nothing.
Yeah. Nothing.
They,
Nothing
they
gets done.
they'll either reach back out to you or they'll figure out a way to get it done by somebody else.
Yeah.
And I'm not distressed because I feel like I need to respond to everything within 24 hours.
That is
But if I
so.
have the
Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Bob.
No, if I have if I'm empowering, I'm empowering my team,
Yes.
to delete all these emails, then it's okay. I mean, life goes on.
It does. It does. I think that's such a radical notion. And in other industries, when we talk about this, they look at us confused as if, why haven't you done that before? That's the norm. I feel like in healthcare, we're so hardwired to constantly help, 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 which is a good thing. But when we help to the point of sacrificing our own balance outside of work because we feel like that's what's expected of us, so much of what you've described, you did a lot of this and you set the tone as the executive, which is so important. And for those who are listening who are not in an executive role, if you're struggling or you want this to be a conversation, share this episode with your leader. If you are an executive, please hear what Dr. Bob Dent is saying and understand that your team, whether they tell you or not, they want this kind of balance. These are the kinds of innovative, simple strategies that will help them, that they will want to stay in your organization, because I worked in 5 different hospitals. Not one of them did any of this. I would have loved to have started it, but none of them did. And to recognize that as the executive, you either start or stop that culture, that mindset yourself with your own email behaviors too. So caution to those who are responding at 2 or 3 a.m. to emails, you're sending a message to your team that you expect that of them as well. So I love all of those examples. That's incredible. Thank you
Yeah,
for
yeah.
sharing that. Yeah.
And when going back to that July and December timeframe, when it's mission critical, oftentimes two things are happening in July, if you think about it, and December, the last half.
Yeah.
People are taking vacation during that time frame. So sometimes you'll have members of your team that are not going to be present, because they're going to be on vacation during the summer or
Yeah.
at around Christmas time and into the year. But what I would tell my team leads during that time frame is assess the meeting, because oftentimes we'll set these recurring meetings to happen month
Mhm.
after month for years. And so assess the meeting. Are we getting the impact that we really want out of this meeting? Do we
Yeah.
need to restructure it anyway? Do we have the right people at the table? We don't
Yep.
need everybody. We need the critical few at
Mhm.
a particular meeting that's going to have that. So relook at that charter during that time frame. And
Yeah.
I've seen meetings end up getting canceled
Yes.
no longer after that July timeframe or that December. And we look at what is really needed here. But
Right.
it's twice a year, kind of an audit and assessment, and you
Yeah.
give the meeting owners that responsibility to take a look at it to say, do we have it all right, or do
Yeah.
we need to change it?
I love that too. And I'll geek out over this for a minute because one of my tools in my workshop is calendar triage. And the power of it, just like you just did that naturally verbally in your own head, but not everybody's wired or has practice with that. So part of what we do is we ask questions, right? So is it driving value? And we define value. Is it improving metrics, cost savings, building relationships, whatever? If it's not driving value, pause it or delete it. If it is it duplicitous? I mean, how many times have we sat in one meeting and heard 30 minutes later the exact same information? And you don't need both meetings. But to your point, very rarely do organizations and meeting owners stop and ask what they can take off versus add. And
Uh-huh.
also, I'll tell you this has been a true confession I've appreciated from a lot of nurse leaders is sometimes, if they're being honest with themselves, they don't mind having a chaotic looking calendar because they say the best offense is a good defense. And by having all of their time taken up, whether they choose to attend those meetings or not, they know no one's going to try to squeeze in yet one more meeting, which isn't ideal. It's not healthy, but again, become the workaround for them to manage their time differently. So lots of good things to consider. And again, if you're a leader in an organization listening to this, there's no harm in bringing your meeting organizers together and running them through that thought process. Is it value added? Do we really need 100 people at this meeting? Ask them this, challenge them. Anything that you can do to take off somebody's calendar will make you so wildly popular in that moment. It's such a big win for people. So wonderful tips there, Bob. I really appreciate that.
So yeah, and I think what that allows leaders to do as well is to be
Yeah.
more intentional about what goes on the calendar. I've always been a big proponent of rounding. I talk about my Gemba and being in the Gemba, where
Yeah.
closest to where the work is doing. So two things there. One, block that time out.
Yeah.
That is sacred time in and of itself, is to go rounding. If you're a leader, going rounding in your units and really getting to know the people, because it's in those building those trusting relationships. Whenever chaos does hit the fan, right? You've got the relationship that they can lean back on. We've got these relationships and everything's going to be okay for the most part. So
Yeah.
that's one. Two, for me as a chief nursing officer, building in the buffer and being intentional. I always met people where they were, not have them come to my office. And so if I had my one-on-one update or a team meeting in a different part of the hospital,
Yep.
having that buffer allowed me to get there. And
Physically.
then
Yeah.
I learned from a regional chief nursing officer many years ago. Her name is Kathy Harris out of Colorado, and she would walk really slow, and I'm one, I'm talking fast. Two, I can I can walk pretty fast as well. But she would say, Bob, between here and there, you've got to go slow.
Mm,
It's in that being slow that you then are approachable.
yeah.
If you just do a flyby as a chief nurse or as a leader, and not really engaging with the team,
Yeah.
you're not developing the kind of relationships you want. And then she would even stand at the desk, lean on the desk, not even have to say anything. 3, 4 minutes goes by, and then all of the sudden, staff start opening up.
Yeah.
And so I learned that many, many years ago, early in my career as a chief nursing officer, and have employed that technique, strategy, if you will. But I love developing that kind of rapport and relationship. But if you do what you do,
Right.
Dr. Carter, and creating the understanding the meeting management and those kinds of things
Yes.
can build in what's meaningful and impactful.
Yes.
That's going to drive the results that you really want.
Yeah. And the message too, I want to make sure the listeners hear this: people first. People first. I know that you're under pressure to drive these other metrics, quality safety. You do not create protected time and spend in meaningful time. Like he said, not a drive by, building those relationships, you're going to chase your tail forever. To Kathy's point, your colleague there, when every time I'd go to a new organization, it would be, like, all over again, showing my team that I'm consistently showing up in the unit. So I would pick a couple days a week, a specific time frame, both shifts. And I would just stand as awkwardly as possible, just hang out at the nurse's station. I wasn't trying to get away. And at first they wouldn't come up to me because they thought, oh, she's just checking a box, to your point. But then, fifth, sixth, seventh time I'm there, they're anticipating, one, that I'll be there. So they've saved some of their thoughts and feedback. And two, they feel more comfortable and getting to know people as a whole person too, right? Like, how are your kids doing? What's going on with your dog? Whatever's going on with them, being seen, valued, and heard by their leader. You want to talk about powerful retention strategies? That's it right there. Having time to have those really intentional conversations and remembering things about people.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely powerful.
I mean, and then checking in to see how their birds are doing.
Yeah, that's right, my
The
birds, yes.
crow.
How beautiful birds I've seen today, oh my gosh, absolutely. Yep, my crazy
It's
bird
that
lady status.
consistency. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Well, we know too, work is a big part of our lives, but it's obviously not our whole experience, and we all need to be able to experience joy and laughter even outside of work. So something I like to ask all my guests is, where are you going, Dr. Bob Dent, to get laughter in your life right now?
Yeah, I mentioned my wife and I, we have 5 children and we have 5 grandchildren, and we got one that lives locally. He's 4 years old.
Oh, love
And,
that baby.
so he's not too far away, so he's always saying, "Pops, will you when you get home, will you wrestle with me?" And I said, "Sure." And so I've been teaching him how to do real wrestling versus just hitting, but
Yeah.
so we're real wrestling and everything, and so he beats me 3 out of 5 times anytime that we
Yeah.
play and do that. He's a cute kid, he's 4 years old. So
Great.
that's one. I love spending time with our family. My wife and I, we do grand camp with our grandkids. We try to do that each year.
Yeah,
We take all of our grandkids and we'll rent an Airbnb or we'll go to Great Wolf Lodge and we'll
yeah,
spend doing a lot of arts and crafts and things with them.
yeah,
We love the great outdoors, and so my wife and I were oftentimes out we love Atlanta. That's where we're here, live in the Atlanta area. But just to get out, do some kayaking, camping, fishing. I love fishing, so I love to get out there with and do that outdoorsy stuff. And
yeah.
I play racquetball 3 days a week.
Yeah, I saw
And
that post recently where you and a friend, were in some kind, was it a full-on tournament or just a game? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, that's that was I was up in Saratoga Springs, New York,
Okay.
and Matt Hinkling, he's the chief nursing officer at Davin Healthcare Workforce Solutions, and David Theobald, he's the founder of that organization. So I was up there with them, did a speaking engagement at the SUNY Adirondack Community College, and with students and nurse leaders around mental health. But Matt, for whatever reason, said, "Hey, Bob, I want to challenge you as some racquetball." Now here's a guy. You could see if you saw the picture. They're both bigger than I am, taller than I am. Matt's a professional hockey player, and he's got a degree in sports medicine. He's got all sorts of stuff, and he's a nurse anesthetist and does a lot of that. And I said, all right, I'll bring my racket. So we played at a local club there, had a great time. And it wasn't until the last game that they realized, because I realized when I got there, they really weren't that good. And so I started playing left-handed, my non-dominant hand, the
Yeah.
whole match. And then the last game, I said, "Hey, do y'all mind if we play one game right-handed? We'll
Yeah.
show you how to speed this game up a little bit." And so
Yeah.
we got a laugh out of that because they thought I was dominant left-handed, and I wasn't. But we had a good time, and that's what it's all about, right? Is been just enjoying life. There's struggles, and there's some really good things that are happening too.
Oh my gosh, I love that story so much. Yeah, I love the post and just the look on everybody's face. It looked like it was so much fun. And I
Yeah.
that is hysterical that you did your non-dominant hand starting out. And they're gonna listen to this. They obviously know because you
Yeah, I
told
do.
them.
Yeah,
But
I'll
it's
share it with them.
that is great. I love it. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. If our listeners want to connect with you, are seeking coaching or mentoring or support, where can they find you?
Sure. Yeah. I've got my new website just went live 2 weeks ago. So it's drbobdent.com. So you can check out there with all my services and things that I offer. I am on LinkedIn. You can find me at Bob Dent there. You can email me, bob.dent at doctor, that's drbobdent.com. And I'm happy to connect with you any way that I can. And I'm here to support, just like you. We're here to support our nurses and nurse leaders across the country and around the globe.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so, so much for taking the time to share your brilliant strategies and your story with us today. I'm so inspired by your journey and the way that you show up for others in your work. I'm so incredibly grateful to know you, and I'm confident you will really help several of our listeners who might be silently carrying more than we know. So thank you, thank you. And just for the listeners, each of Dr. Dent's strategies and tips can be found in the show notes below. Thank you for listening, and until next time, Chaos Whispered. Thanks for joining us on the Chaos Whispers of Healthcare. If today's episode resonated with you, please be sure to follow this podcast, rate, and leave a review on your favorite platform. I'm Dr. Megan Carter, and I will be back next week with more real talk, fresh strategies, and guests who are redefining what it means to lead with impact. Want to keep the conversation going? Be sure to connect with me on LinkedIn and download free tools and resources from my website. Both links are in the show notes. Let's heal this broken healthcare system together, one day at a time.